summertime, it felt right drinking cherry wine with you. Just wanted to own it, just wanted to take the time, learn all the things that I could about you. Now it's such a mess here, oh, we are just stressed here. Used to be so easy with you.
Hi, Marcus. Welcome to Everything Sparkle. Thank you so much for being on my show today.
It's a great privilege to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so tell us about what you have going on, because this is really cool.
So going on, I guess the short list of things is we're starting a new idea in film distribution to movie theaters. It is kind of an unparalleled idea for a small distributor to really want to start in the cinema space, but that's what we're doing. So we're actually here in Las Vegas for the week at, it's kind of like a family reunion because I run into all the people that I've worked with for 25 years of my life, from the exhibition side, the studio side, my colleagues, my counterparts, my collaborators. And it's kind of fun to be here because we're starting to have, I think we're starting to actually have an honest conversation about the meaningful way we get independent film into movie theaters.
So what's the meaningful way that this should be done?
Well, and again, there may be a million different perspectives.
What does your company focus on, and what's the name of it?
The company's Impact Releasing, and Impact Releasing is kind of like the umbrella of a number of different smaller film platforms. Our first that we're launching with is called Vetflix, VETFLICKS, vetflix.com is our website. And the idea is, as a veteran myself, I really wanted to do something that would shine the bright light of service and honor on those who have served, to kind of demystify. I heard the expression probably about a decade ago about the military-civilian divide. And having had served, I didn't realize just how few people have heard the call to serve. So I thought, well, if only 10%, up to 10% of the country is serving, that leaves the other 90% a beneficiary of that service. And there's got to be some in that equation that are curious about why a boy or grown man would raise their right hand to support and defend such some really involved core values and concepts. So we wanted to initially kind of start that way, but then we realized that a lot of communities are using art therapy to help veterans who are working through post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, moral injuries, to use storytelling, creative arts, filmmaking, videos, music videos, these sorts of outlets to help work through some of the ravages that those situations have created. So I thought, well, we've got people making really powerful stories. The most important and the most impactful place that people are going to experience that is in the sanctuary of cinema. I think YouTube and Netflix and iTunes and all these digital platforms are amazing to kind of help promote this agenda. But I think ultimately in the Vetflix space, the real conversation, as we're calling it, the national conversation, is going to happen when, for one night a week, we have currently a number of national exhibition outlets that are ready to move on to this initiative with us in 2022. But initially, it is just calling for Monday nights to be called Military Mondays at the Movies. We did just before COVID, we had done a test program with the Independent Cinema Alliance at a number of their locations across the country. We had great results. We unfortunately hit COVID and we had to stop. So
are these movies based on veterans, or are these veterans that are putting out movies?
It's both. It's both. I think there has
to be somehow a veteran tied to this. It either has to be about veterans, or a veteran actor, or a veteran creator.
And it has to be, and it has to honor the veteran service, because sometimes I think Hollywood kind of misses the point about military service and creates these fantastic stories about this guy who nobody understands, who goes out and murders 27 people. I'm not saying there's not maybe been a couple of those things, but we're trying to find the way to honor the veteran experience by creating positive images of what that service was. Some of them are extremely difficult to watch. My partner, I love him dearly. He is an absolute amazing gauge of when something is really intense, because he'll get up and say, I just can't watch this. And I'll sit there and I'm like, what's wrong with this? And then he'll come up with a laundry list of things of why it was difficult for him. But I think if we can't if we can't depict the experiences, we'll never understand them. So we try to be as honest as we can be with the content that we distribute, but at the same time, we want to make sure that it is a healthy and healing opportunity for people to learn through edutainment or, you know, inspiration or whatever those different components of what these films are, to kind of have that understanding that the experience is going to take you to a different place, you know, body, mind, and soul. Make sense?
That's awesome. Okay, so what exactly is Vetflix? What are some of the things you're going to do? You're going to try to figure out how to put some of these movies into mainstream theaters, or?
Absolutely correct. So what we had started with Military Mondays at the Movies was asking movie theater owners in 30 markets to donate movie tickets to veterans on Monday.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And it was a simple call to action. It didn't really come with much expectation other than I would give the theater a list of names from our Veteran Ticket Foundation partners who have veterans who've agreed that they wanted to go to the movies on Monday night and take their family. The next step was to start to bring in some of our Vetflix content into that as an opportunity to build that relationship and the confidence with local service members to realize that we weren't the Hollywood machine. And please don't misinterpret. The Hollywood machine has made this industry what it is, and I respect and adore it. But
basically, it means you're lower budgets. This isn't going to be like a Hollywood production.
Yeah. You're not going to get Raiders of the Lost Ark in Vietnam with us. But although that does sound like a great creative idea, I'll think about that. It's about relationship, and we wanted to build upon that. So we have something called Vetflix Movie Club, which we're going to introduce in 2022 as well, which we're going to bring all these great streaming platforms together and then take some of the great successful streaming content and introduce that in the theatrical situations as well. So we got a lot of opportunity in the cinema space that I don't think a lot of people saw value or understood the mechanics of it. I come from a distribution and sales background from Universal Studios and 20th Century Fox, and I've been the part of 435 feature releases in my life, and through the studios and another 13. Our 13th is a film called Narco Sub. My 13th is a film called Narco Sub that we're taking out for a Houston-based production company called Deepwater Productions. Narco Sub is a 96-minute R-rated adrenaline rush of a family man who's played by Tom Vera. He plays Commander Bruce Stryker, who is a Navy veteran, a Navy SEAL, whose family is kidnapped. And in order to get his family back, he has to go to the dark side and help the Colombian cartel bring drugs into America by using this old submarine. And
that sounds interesting.
That's the setup. Tom Vera's in it. Tom is an amazing actor. He's an incredible human being. He's about to become a first-time dad. He and his wife, Amy, are about to have their first daughter. Tom Sizemore is in it. He's great. He plays for...
I'm doing a movie with him next month. That's awesome.
What's that?
I'm doing a movie with Tom Sizemore next month. That's so funny.
Oh, we should get you a link to watch. Narco Sub, so you can.
I'd love to.
All right, I know how to find you. But it's in theaters on September 10th. So when do you start with Tom on your project?
I'm doing it in middle of September 22nd. But it might go in earlier. So yeah. Got
it. Okay, I'll make sure we take care of you before.
That's so cool. So, okay, so let me get this straight. You're a veteran yourself.
Yes. I served from 1987 to 1992 in the United States Army, the California Army National Guard, and the United States Army Reserve. I was 23 years old when I enlisted. I was watching a movie called Heartbreak Ridge that Clint Eastwood was in on a Wednesday. On a Friday, I saw The Recruiter. On Monday night, I was taking the written test, and on Tuesday afternoon at 3:00, I state your name. And it was something that was... something I had always wanted to do. I had a brother who's a Marine who is in heaven. That it was very difficult for my mom to go through that process because my brother had a TBI that turned into cancer and really kind of shortened his life. And when I enlisted, it was a great deal of difficulty for my mother to accept. And
oh gosh, yeah.
And again, I was 23. I didn't think I had to float it past the committee of mom, but I've since apologized. Well, I still had the time to apologize, but it's something I cherish. And I cherish the memories, and I can remember some of those days as clearly as we're speaking here now on your Everything Sparkle. And I just I realized that living in Los Angeles, sometimes you get to parts of the city where we find the displaced people, and someone was telling me that 36% of the displaced people living in the streets of Los Angeles are veterans. And I just realized I needed to do something with this chapter of my life that was meaningful, and being able to help them meant the world to me. So we're just trying to help the world better understand, so that maybe there's a better understanding of the traumas and the other injuries that occur in the battlefield, or just through everyday life, that we can be better to each other. So we're starting with Vetflix, and Impact Releasing is moving into a couple other kind of niche areas. We're working on a platform called Deaflix and Blindflix, so that the blind, deaf, and hard of hearing have equal access to the cinemas as well.
Oh yeah.
It is
Marcus. So after, I'm sorry to backtrack a little bit. After you got out, in 94, when you stopped, did you get straight into movies?
Yes.
And then you started working in Universal and doing all that. Yeah. How was that though? That's a big switcheroo. Like, I'm gonna go do this and then that.
I always knew I wanted to work in the film business, and when I first got to LA before I enlisted, I had met a lot of friends, and it was just it was kind of funny. I had a friend who worked for the Samuel Goldwyn Company, and I was managing the Cinerama Dome Theater in Hollywood at the time, so Meryl says, "Hey, we're looking for someone to work in the mailroom. Would that be anything you'd want to do?" I said, "Huh." Work in the mailroom at the Samuel Goldwyn Company. That actually sounds really cool. And it was. And it's what got me into the distribution sales side. My first film there was, I should probably add that in the resume because there's probably a few extra titles. Started in the mailroom at Goldwyn, and then went to Universal in 1990. Well, it was part-time. And then was there till 98, and then 20th Century Fox and studio operations from 98 to 2001, and then back to Universal to 2013.
Wow, that's quite an interesting career and quite an interesting jump. I bet there wasn't a lot of other veterans in there with you, were there?
It's the few that were there were mostly Vietnam veterans, and mostly on the film programming side. The distribution team back in the day, when you had the big names like the Daryl Zanucks and people like that, they were certainly all veteran people, but few and far between in the industry today.
That's very fascinating. Okay, so go back to what you were saying. I'm so sorry. I just really wanted to hear about your history because it's so interesting to me.
Thank you. Good.
You were saying from that, after you kind of get Vetflix taking off, then you're going to work on the deaf and the blind. Yes,
Blindflix and Deaflix, because and the great thing is we have a really nice relationship with a blinded veterans organization, and NarcoSub is thoroughly described for the blind. So a blind veteran or blind anybody could go and experience NarcoSub sitting right next to their sighted family members. It's also closed caption for the deaf and hard of hearing. So the movie guest requests the device, and they get to watch the closed captions delivered discreetly to them. So fortunately, NarcoSub, we had the budget to kind of deliver this kind of experience that a lot of other independent films don't, because either A, they can't afford it, or they don't see the value in it, or they don't understand this relationship exists. But there are 36 million Americans with hearing loss in this country across the spectrum of age and space and how the hearing loss occurred. And there's another 10 million people who live with a blind or low vision issue. And I just want to make sure that, now that I get to do my own thing, which is really cool, that everything I do is available to everyone, because we can and we should. And like I say, the independents aren't really particularly aware of this or focused or willing to be a part of that kind of added value. But it is something that I see great value in, and something that will result in other platforms to help make sure that everyone, if we leave no one behind on the battlefield, I don't think we should leave anybody behind at the box office. I think it's really, I think it's really a part, and part of the other dynamic is the Title III of ADA. The Obama administration went in and said, so you've got your handicap, your disabled parking places, you've got all this stuff you've done. Now you've got to make the movies accessible. when we went from 35 millimeter to digital, we started adding these additional opportunities that the studio's it's just a checkbox. It's, when you've got billions of dollars, a few $1,000s here, a few $1,000s there, no one really pays any attention to the fact you're spending it on something in an area where you don't have an existing relationship. So, so these assets that are on the DCPs, the digital cinema files, they've been there for 10 years. And there's just not been an effort. And again, I'm not trying to rag on Hollywood, but there's just not been the effort, I think, as an industry that we could invest into that. So I wanted to be sure that with the stuff I did, that Blindflix and Deathflix would be at least a part of that, which is why we made it impact releasing, which is an actual 501c3 that people can, at some point in the near future, when we get our fundraising campaign set up, contribute to and be a part of and support and go to movies and help people get to the movies who have a vision impairment or hearing loss.
Okay, Marcus, so I understand for hearing impaired about the closed captions, all that. What accommodations do you make for the blind? Okay,
so Title III ADA requires that every movie theater in the country, in order to be compliant and not be fined, provide a technological device. And it's usually a device no bigger than an iPhone, to which the headset is plugged into one ear. Most blind people prefer not to hear the movie mixed with the description. But so let's say the action is a man picks up Oreos, but you can't hear me pick up the Oreos. So what happens is when we're talking, I pick up the Oreos and the narrator off camera says, the redheaded man picks up a bag. It has Oreos.
Wow, okay.
And the first time I experienced this, I went to a movie. It was a movie Flight with Denzel Washington. And a friend of mine was blind, and Lynn Manning, who's an amazing actor who I miss dearly because he's watching down on all this, wondering, when are you going to get it done, Bovee? When are you going to get it done? And there was a scene in the movie where Lynn was sitting right next to me, and the close-up, there's this girl, and I don't remember the entire scene, there's a story, but she had a relationship with intravenous drugs. And the close-up is very viscerally on the registration of her registering and the blood going back in the syringe. And Lynn goes, "Oh my." And I'm like, it was just, every time I tell the story, the hairs on my arms stand up, because sitting next to him, I wouldn't have known how to describe that. But when he heard it described, it registered, pardon the expression, it made an impact on him as we're sitting there. And there was a couple of times we'd go to the movies and he would laugh independently about something that he heard described, not based upon not the dialogue or anything like that, just how somebody fell down the stairs or whatever it was. I can't remember, other than the Flight one. And I should probably go get that sequence one day just to show that as an example, because it's powerful. And when you can, I like to go. So Regal LA Live, they used to have the best setup. They had the Sony, gosh, what was it called? So basically, they had glasses that deaf people would wear that had the captions that would float in the glass. And I would always take the blind friends and the deaf friends together. We'd go to the movie, and I'd sit in the middle, feeling like I just had the most amazing religious experience, because there's communication problem, not communication problems, but there's a communication dynamic at the box office. And there's also a communication dynamic at the concession stand that's very interesting when you're trying to explain to people working behind the concession stand that my friend is blind. He doesn't know what small, medium, and large means. And like, well, we could give him the cups and he could feel. I said, yes, or you could just tell him 32, 46, and 83 ounces. And he would probably be happy to hear that. Oh, we never thought of that. So I think there's a whole roadmap of making the movie business on the cinema side a lot more inviting and a lot more exciting and a lot more authentic and a lot more rewarding when we bring everybody together. So that's that for me.
I think it's really awesome what you're doing. I see that we have come a long way with closed caption. What further advances do we need to make? Is it really like independent films are the ones that are left out? Like, where do you see, where are we lacking? So, and again, since we have our 501c3, part of the bigger roadmap is to have a fund so that independent filmmakers who don't have the budget for these sorts of services can have some kind of support, because it's not a big deal. It's just a cost center that most people are either unaware of
or don't understand the value that it adds, or are unfamiliar with the technology. So there's a part of this whole thing where we just want to make sure filmmakers understand what the workflow looks like, what the technology is, how it's all created, and the cinema, the majors, all the studios, it's just a checkbox. It's like craft services, $10,000, check. Audio description, check. It's just there, but there's not been a relationship building exercise yet. So to be able to really get independent filmmakers to have access to the ability to connect, I think that's where the real value will happen and occur. As so many independents really value that whole relationship dynamic. And I think that's the future in independent distribution as a model altogether, because it's more powerful when, as a filmmaker, you start building that relationship with who's going to come and see your movie while you're making it, or even before you shoot the first frame. Start building that relationship. So when it comes to, I think there's still a bit of a fantasy in the whole value of film festivals. And again, I'm not trying to rag on film festivals. I think they serve an amazing purpose. But there's this concept, I think, with a lot of filmmakers that is kind of based in a business that's probably 30, 40 years old that doesn't exist anymore, that I've got a great film, oh my God, and I'm going to get it in Sundance. I'm going to get it in Tribeca, and somebody from Universal is going to be there, and they're going to buy my $200,000 movie about pandas. And that might be, but I think the reality is slightly different. And now that we have no more costly 35 millimeter prints, no more costly transportation of those printed assets to a movie theater, the costs have shifted in such a way that it kind of empowers independent filmmakers to actually think about that relationship at the beginning. And hopefully we can be a catalyst empowering people to realize that let's all work together. Let's make really great projects. This isn't an I thing, it's a we thing. And to be able to bring an audience that's previously not had that opportunity to be able to have a meaningful relationship, it's kind of exciting.
So what's gone on so far? You said before COVID, you did like a little experiment. It was well received. Was this just in LA? How do we get this on a national level? How do we get this in our little town theaters to start this? Well,
there's a couple things. Number one, there's a couple missing components still that I think are really important. Number one, to have filmmakers supporting the accessible world across the board. We have a Ticket Foundation partner with millions of verified veterans around the country. We're trying to see how we do something similar with people who identify with vision loss and hearing loss, so that we can help support or subsidize some kind of meaningful relationship with people who want to get involved. But I think ultimately why we're here right now is to talk to the leadership of the exhibition industry, the leadership of NATO and the different independent and national circuits about, we just came out of a pandemic, and it seems like we're going back to doing business the same way we did before, which only services the major players. Which is, they've got plenty of money to do all they can to keep everybody else out but themselves. But I think the general public is starting to get smart to the whole, oh my God, another superhero franchise, yay. And again, I'm not ragging on superhero franchises, or am I? Maybe I am, I don't know. Phone starts to ring tomorrow and people are telling me I don't know what I'm talking about. I will be glad to listen. But there's a few more things, but starting by having the support of the exhibition industry, as it seems it's starting to tee up, is going to be the first important thing, because they're the people with the buildings that people want to go into. And I don't think there has to be a call to action quite yet with people getting engaged from places other than, impact releasing kind of leading the way. And making sure we have all of our I's dotted and T's crossed, because there's a lot of intellectual property dynamics in this that, of course, we want to protect for ourselves, and we want to make sure that our filmmakers are protected, and of course, we want to make sure the audience, especially is dealing with people who are vulnerable and in situations where other situations have preyed upon that. We want to make sure that everything we do registers and has the proper support and ambassadorship with everybody we're working with. So I think it's just a matter of time. I wish there was 80 hours in the day, but there's only 24, and 8 of those or 5 of those, or in my case, the last 3 days, 3 a night. But that's okay. I can sleep when I'm dead.
So what are you looking for the average person to do? Like, how can somebody watching get involved? That's like, this is a great idea. I have a friend that's deaf. How do I get involved in telling them, man, my local movie theater to get on board? Like, where does anybody start?
Well, I think the simple answer to that question is just to be aware. And again, as I've always said, Sparkle, that the amazing part is when the sighted and the hearing are aware of that these services exist. And in the veteran space, on the Vetflix side, that people understand the idea, and it's just an awareness issue. It's just an awareness issue, I think, that, and to make sure that people are aware. And from awareness comes a curiosity. And as our agenda starts to grow, I hope I can come back and tell you about how it's going, and be a little more prepared for the answer of what someone could do. Because I honestly, I think that the important thing right now is just that we find a quiet place in our hearts. We exhale all of the whatever it is that's been going on since March of 2020. We heal, we become aware, and we start to get out and live again. And I don't know if this is the right time for that. It might be, it might not be. Certainly seems that there's things happening, and we're getting back to that place. But I think right now, just for today, to make sure that we're all aware that there's an amazing opportunity that is an industry of storytellers and moviegoers that we've not fully begun to take advantage of.
So what's the website again and are you guys on Instagram, Facebook? Where can people look for updates? Like, where can people look for that?
They can look for Impact Releasing on Facebook and Instagram. We've got the Vetflix Instagram and Facebook all set up.
Impact Releasing and Vetflix are the two things right now that are circulating.
VETFLICKS. And I'm sure that we get all the links for everything Sparkle.
Perfect. Yeah, because I think people are really going to be all about this. We do a lot of stuff with veterans on this show. We've worked a lot with Sherry's Arc, because Sherry's Arc is about helping house homeless veterans. That's what her organization is about. And you mentioned that problem in LA.
Okay, so she's in LA?
Yeah, she's in LA. So, but she's she wants this to become a national thing eventually, this project to really take over. They're just like, so I was just wondering, like, the difference, how different people, if they wanted to start donating, or are you just waiting for the crowdfunding, like what people can do?
I gotta be careful, because I want to make sure my exhibition partners are comfortable with what we're doing and get their, oh my God, this is great, go for it. And I had a really wonderful conversation last night with some theater owners in Texas, and they're like, Bovee, whatever you need from us, just let us know. But that's 2 out of hundreds that I still have to have other people that, again, so far, I think I'm in the right lane. I'm at the right time. I've got the right agenda. I've got the right mission. I've got the right people. It's just a question of the agenda probably starts here, and we're there, and we're really close. We're really close, but we just have to be patient and make sure. But there's a part of the national platform to me that's very appealing, because that's what we're looking to do, and it would be really kind of cool. With different local veteran organizations that probably have email lists and people who service, and probably an opportunity to create some fundraising events for them that become a fundraising event for us. So if there was some kind of conversation that we could bring together, I always love to find ways to make solutions happen. So if we could help with some kind of event, we're doing an event. We're doing an event this Saturday in Corpus Christi, Texas. It's actually at the Movies Inc. in Aransas Pass. We're showing Narco Sub before it opens to a veteran audience there. So any veterans who are in the Corpus Christi area or veteran family, the theater has donated the theater. We're donating the movie, and the theater's donating the popcorns and sodas. And JD Tierney, he's got a podcast, Southpaw's Tales from the Barstool. It's an amazing podcast. He and his wife, Kat, are amazing people. And he's down in Corpus lining up this theater of 200 seats that has donated everything. And it's kind of cool. The theater It's a 10-plex, and they have they call it their party room, and it's, if you look it up online, Movies Inc. Aransas Pass, Texas. They have a decommissioned World War II plane in the and they call it the party room, which is, it's the fuselage and the plane, but they've taken the wings and the bomb bay doors off the plane to use them for bar tops and tables for people
Oh,
to.
wow.
And
I
so
love that. That's super cool.
and the theater that they're in, the theater the upholstery of the chairs is actually the soft brown leather that is used to make the bomber jackets for pilots. And it's going to be a really great day. I'm trying to get there, but I live in Florida and we're in Vegas, and I've been in 6 cities in the last 48 hours, and I'm exhausted. But I still have 3 days to go.
Oh my gosh, I love what you're doing, Marcus. That's why I appreciate you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule just to be here and talk to us about all this. Thank you so much for coming on my show.
My pleasure. Anytime I can help, and if we can continue the conversation downstream, I would absolutely love to come back.
Hi, Jose. Thank you for coming on the Everything Sparkle show. I'm glad I finally have you on because I see you everywhere. I see your book everywhere. Tell us about it.
Yeah. Oh, well, the book is based on about my life story, about the adversities that I went through as a childhood, throughout my teenage, and through my adult, and I just use it as a platform to help those that are having problems with suicide, mental health, bullying, anything that has to do with trying to become a better person.
I see a little kid next to you. There's somebody next to you. I saw like head.
Yeah, that's my son Logan.
Oh my gosh, can we see him?
I guess come here.
Is he shy?
Nah, he's acting like he's shy. Yeah, he's saying shy. He's like right next to me.
Get put on the spot. That is so cute. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the journey. You decided about what you went through and how you decided to write a book.
All right, so my journey pretty much started when I was born in 1971. I was raised around drugs, sex abuse, physical abuse, drug abuse, and throughout the 1970s, that's pretty much what I was being exposed to at the time.
And this was all in New York?
Where was all this? The Bronx. I was born in the Bronx, South Bronx in New York City, March 6, 1971. And at the time, my mother was 17. She just had turned 17 years old, so she was a minor when she had me. And so what ended up happening was through my father was a womanizer, and he was a lot older than my mother. He was in his 20s, almost towards his 30s. And then ended up happening was that he was out and about, and pretty much what ended up happening was he was very abusive to my mother. So I was exposed to that of him abusing my mother, beating her up and all this other stuff. And then
where do you guys what's your race, what's your ethnic background? Are you Dominican?
I'm Puerto Rican.
Rican.
Family's from Puerto Rico. Yeah. So I usually get that a lot.
Is it your mom and your dad both sides are Puerto Rican?
Yeah. Yeah, my mother's from Puerto Rico, and so is my father. And
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah. So I get my mother. It's because my father's grandmother, my grandmother. I mean, I should say my grandmother. She's as I was told, she was African American, but she was actually from overseas. She was not even. She's like came out from South Africa or something like that. And so she ended up meeting my grandfather. My grandfather is what they call them over there in Puerto Rico is Taino, which is the Indians. And
Okay.
so that's where the whole look and complexion, I guess, that's what that came about.
So
But yeah, I
your
get that a lot.
your grandparents, were they so they were like the generation that came here? Both your parents'
Yeah,
side, your parents?
right,
And so when
right.
they
So
came
my
here,
mom.
were they okay
Go
with your
ahead.
mom getting with your dad that young because it was like they were
Well,
in the same culture?
Well, it was a whole different thing with my father. Let me rephrase that. My father's parents. My grandmother's the one that was black. My grandfather was Spanish. My mother's
Okay.
side, they're from Puerto Rico and Spain.
Okay.
So my mother is from a whole different town in Puerto Rico, and so is my father. And my mother had moved to New York when she was about 12 years old, and
Okay.
yeah, so she was born in 53. Yeah, so in around 60, the early 60s, she moved to the Bronx. My father's already living in the Bronx at the time, and he was an established mechanic and auto body. So he had his own business back then.
Oh,
And
nice.
so then, yeah, so and that's how they met when they were young, and that's how that became about. And so at that time, they didn't really give like my grandmother had passed away, which is my mother's mom, had passed away a month before I was born. So she had passed away in February. And then I was born in March, so I never got
Oh,
to meet my
wow.
grandmother. And
Okay.
because she was young at the time, and back in the in 70s, my aunt, which was my mother's older sister, was able to allow me to have me in the house and my mother because she was a minor. Because at the time they were looking at trying to take me away. Social services were coming in to try to take me away because of my mother being young.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so yeah, and that's how that started establishing. And then as I was growing in through the early 70s, my father was always in and out of the house. You'll see him some days he'll be there for 3 days, then you don't see him for a week, and then he's back home again for a couple of days, and then you don't see him again for like it was always on and on throughout my life
So
like
he
that.
was
And
living
through
with
that time
your
being,
mom and your
I
aunt,
was
the
yeah,
dad?
at the time, yeah. And then
Okay.
when my father decided to get a place for my mother, we always lived in the same building, but right across from each other the whole way, the projects. So if she was in 2B, we were in 3C or whatever but we were always there. We were never somewhere out of reach, so to speak. And so because she was involved with my father, of course, being the man of the house, he decided then and got a place for my mother and for himself. And that's how that started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
And then did you
so
have siblings at any point?
at that time, no. Throughout that time, well, what's going on is that my father, I guess, was stressing my mother out and doing all these drugs and sleeping with a whole bunch of women and all this stuff. That at some point, my mother thought that I was just being like my father, she kept calling me a clown or I wanted to be a comedian because when she would talk to me about something, I'm always answering something else. And she used to be thinking, oh, so you want to be like your dad. And so what happened was I would just get a beat down every day. It was always a beat down every day, and I didn't understand then. As fast forward, when as time went through, I understood why. But at that time, I wasn't understanding why I was always getting beat up. And like when I say beat up, I was getting like beat up really bad to the point where I couldn't even sleep because my body was so tender. And then but this was an on and off thing. And then but when my father then used to use me to go out, he used me as an excuse for him to go out and try to act like he's doing a father and son thing. But in reality, my mother didn't know was that he was taking me out and we were going to different women's houses while he was doing drugs, sleeping with women, the door wide open. I had, like I was exposed to watching them have sex.
And this is while he owned the body shop? And he still owned a body shop at this time?
Yeah, he was doing all that stuff. He had
a job. He was a professional. He made money, and then still had this life where he was doing all this stuff. Okay.
Right, and so he used to do a lot of the Hot Rod magazine. He used to do a lot of Mustangs, Corvettes. Like he used to do those kind of things. Like he used to have all those good cars back then. That's not what they have now, but and so that was his whole thing. Like he used to talk about, you could be the ugliest guy in the world, but if you got a nice car, you can get any girl in the car. And that was the way he thought he was teaching me something good. You're like, hey, listen, you can be the ugliest guy in the world, but if you got a good car, any girl's gonna jump in the car. And so, and that was his whole thing. And then behind that whole thing, there were days that we'll go hang out in the garage where he works at. He's owning his own business. And then I will be the guy that doing the cutting up the white line for him. So I don't know if you know what that means. I was
Were you
cutting up
doing
the
drugs?
line.
Yeah. Were you doing drugs as well?
Yeah. No,
when you were a kid?
No,
you were helping him, but you weren't doing it.
Right. I know that at one point around, I have a picture when I was around, like, I think it was 4 or 5 years old. I was smoking a roach that my father used to leave around his ashtray. And so my house was covered in black paint. The whole wall was in black paint with neon paintings and hippie symbols. And that was just the lifestyle that I was growing up in. But at the time, it seems normal to me because that's what I was exposed to.
What about your friends? Was it normal for them? Did you have friends that came over? Was that kind of normal or no?
No, I didn't have friends.
Really?
So you
went to school, right? But you did go to school.
But I was going to school, but at the time I was getting beat up and bullied at school, not only by the kids there, but also by the teachers.
Because
so end up happening.
What was the deal about that? Why did
what they thought that I was just being being a problem child. Like every time they always thought that,
like mouthy, right?
No, I wasn't. I was very shy. Now I'm a big mouth. But when I was younger, I was so shy. But they said that I didn't stay still, or I didn't, like there was a lot of things going on. I guess whatever it is that touched the nerve to the teacher. So what happened was in '79, I moved up. At this time now, my father had went to Rikers Island numerous of times, but the last time he went in, it was going on 78, going on 79. We moved up to upstate Orange County in Middletown. And then what ended up happening was that I went to school, repeating the 3rd grade again. And the teacher took the initiative to actually see and monitor every student there. It was a whole different atmosphere because it was more laid back, more different. The teachers are more caring, in other words. The teachers in the city was like, I just got a job and that's it. And they were miserable.
They didn't care. What happened to your dad's body shop when you guys moved?
End up happening was he ended up going to jail. He lost everything. My mother had left him. And that's when I moved up to upstate in '79.
With whom?
When we moved up there, yeah, with my mother.
Okay.
So
now I get it.
So my mother left my father because she couldn't take it anymore. At the time, my brother was born. My brother Richie was born in '77. And so it was just him and I. And
is that your brother from both your mom and your dad? That's your actual full brother?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And
so they had 2 of you.
Yeah. So now at that time, now it's just both of us. And then and that's how that started. Through all that process before we moved up, I had witnessed my mother trying to commit suicide. And then I tried to commit suicide at the age of around 6 and at 8.
At 6?
And then, when I was 6 years old. And then I tried again around when I was 8 years old.
So how'd you try to do this at 6 and 8?
Well, because I saw my mother take pills. So I thought that's what I had to do.
So you took that at 6 years old?
Yeah. And so at 6 years old, I tried. And I just did, for some reason, I never tried. I attempted. Let's just put it that way. I didn't do it. I didn't execute it through. At I tried again, not the trying, but it was more of the thought of trying to go through it. And I don't know what was it inside me kept saying that I shouldn't. Even though physically, mentally, I just wanted to do it because I felt like I was a burden for my mother. And every time that I go somewhere where I was get beat up or I was get hit or something, I felt like I was just, a nuisance. That was it. I was just something that was taking space and making everybody's life miserable.
And you
So
thought that
when
at
we
that
moved,
age, you were like process those thoughts at that young of an
right,
age.
because at that age, I'm taking care of my father when he's drunk and high, making sure he gets to bed. My mother, like it was just crazy. So at the time, it was like, and then my mother never took drugs, which is now I guess that was a good thing. But she never drank, she never took drugs or anything like that. My father did the whole 9 yards, and so he was the guy that exposed me to a lot of things I shouldn't have been exposed as a child. And so it got to the point where my mother just had enough. And then when we end up moving to upstate, that's when we came across with this teacher, Miss Perez. She noticed something was off with me and sent a letter to my mother. And that letter and what that teacher did changed my whole life at home for the better. What ended up happening was they realized that when my mother went took me to to the doctors, they kind of found out that I'm deaf in one ear and moderately lost on the other. So that explained that every time my mother was talking to me from behind or wherever she was talking to me or whatever was taking place, there was a reason behind that now. There was a reason why when she asked me something, I will respond with something that I thought was what she was saying. And I never realized that until the
You didn't
teacher did.
realize you couldn't hear? Wow.
No, because it was something, it was just part of me. It'll be different if you were like, say, if you have, you have your legs and all of a sudden you have an accident. Now you lose
Yeah.
your leg. Now is you trying to like cope with how you're going to walk, how you're going to react, how you got to function.
But if you're born
But
like that and you don't know,
right, but
wow.
it's part of it, right? So you really don't know. And so what ended up happening was that then then that resolved the problem with that. So I was excited because now, okay, this is it. This is what really was the problem that was hindering me at school and at home or anywhere I was going at. And so it was then at that time that my mother, it was just crazy because at the time, I remember my mother getting a call, and then when she found out, that woman couldn't stop crying for like a week. She kept hugging me, crying, and saying, "I love you. I'm so sorry." And I always said, "No, I'm sorry," because that was something I was used to telling her because I felt every time she was crying, it was my fault. But I didn't realize this what my father was making her go through at the time. But I thought it was me. So whenever she would cry or something going on, I would be like, "Oh, so sorry. Like, what do you want me to do?" Like, and I was always making excuses to just to make things better for her. So I thought at the time. And then all I was just praying for my mother to be the mom she should be. Like I was like, what does it take to just be loved? Because I had no idea what it was, like there were moments we had good moments. I'm not saying that she was that, but there were moments when I didn't know, but there were more bad than good in my life. And then when this teacher did what she did, really changed my whole household. Because now at the time, she was a single parent. She's trying to take care of me and my brother. I remember her trying to make ends meet, and she would go to work at a graveyard shift, and I would stay up with my brother at home alone. At the time, I was only 9 years old. My brother was two, and she would go to work. I'll break night with my brother because he was hard to go to sleep, and then she'll come home in the morning, and I had to walk like 4 blocks down to my school by myself, and do this all over. Like this was like the life that I had, and I, eventually, what ended up happening was that things started changing at home. This is was put to light, in other words. But then it became a problem when now they took me out of a regular class and put me in a special class. And so that's when the whole thing kind of like really changed, and things were like got worse, just got worse because now I'm put in class with different kids with different disability. And back then they didn't know how to handle it. It's not like now they can kind of put you in classes where you know you belong, and they can help you. And but back then it was like, okay, he's got a language barrier, he's deaf. What the hell? Just throw him in one of those classes with the rest of the guys, and that's how
Right.
that was. And it's sad. But now, thank God that it's different. But that's what I had to deal with back then. So they'll just put me in there, and then I'll just sit there and, okay, now what? And so my mother never was a mom that really participated in going to school or finding out what I was going through or none of that. And so now I was going through the nonsense of school getting picked on because I have a hearing aid that's bigger than my ear. And then I had long hair. I always had long hair like a girl because I had a burn mark in the top of my right ear. And that's why I'm deaf at. And so I had a like hair like yours. It's in my Instagram if you look it up. I got long hair like a girl.
So
And it was all
wait,
because it
what
was
happened to
that.
you to make you deaf then? Did somebody torture? Is that what happened?
So that's when we end up finding out what we thought was a birthmark it was actually a burn mark that ended up happening through the specialist that took care of me. He said it was due to they sterilized the forceps too hot. So they had burned my whole entire ear, my skin.
Who did that?
The doctor that helped my mother deliver. And
So when you were born. Okay, that is so I've never heard of that. That's fascinating.
Yeah. And so and that's we thought it was crazy. We thought that it was like, okay, but again, we started to know this as time went on, because now at this time I never had a girlfriend, I never talked to any girls, well, I never socialized with anybody except for my cousin. And I didn't have friends because of the way I look. So I look like a girl. And then we had a lot of money, so I had some cheap clothes. Like, it was like cheap clothes I had. It was like, and and you had hand-me-downs, or you had some real busted clothes, and that barely fits you, or you go to, it was rough. It was really rough growing up. And so at some point, as I started getting older, and it was just things just started not working right. It was just like, okay, maybe next time, this is gonna be what it is. And so it was just it was kind of tough. So that's what ended up happening, and then going through a lot of things that I was going through, these adversity through life. I didn't know any better because I didn't have someone to mentor me or kind of walk me through or tell me. I just had to learn for myself because of the environment that I was growing up in.
So when did you decide to write a book, and when did things start to turn around for you a little bit, where you started to figure things out for yourself and like, this isn't right, I can do this now? When did all that come about?
That came about probably 2 years ago to start writing. I was already talking almost for 20 years. I was already speaking, but I wasn't getting paid for it. I was just pretty much going to juvenile detentions, going to church. Anywhere they put me in front of the mic, I would talk about whatever adversity that I have been through. So that was really that's where I'm at. So I'm an adversity keynote speaker. So I talk about how to overcome adversity, living with disability, how you can still manage to overcome that and become, effective in your life and other people's life. And so I started packing all this up. And 2 years ago, I had a mentor that was always watching me speak. And he was like, listen, you need to put your book out there. People need to know about what you've been through and how you overcome, and put something, because your story can help other kids and help adults or anyone that's puts their hand on reading it. And so I was like, I love talking, I hate writing. So I was like, I don't know about this. So I kind of brushed it off for about a month or so. And then I just thought about it. And I guess where it got down to it is that I realized that I would have loved someone to have reached out to me and give me the tools that I have now to give to others. And so that's kind of where I just started saying, you know what, if it's for one person, the hell with it, I'm going to do it. And that's how that started. And then I just started writing, and my mentor was overseeing what I was writing, making sure everything was on point. And then and then just progress it, and took it to the publishers, and the rest was history. That's how that started.
So who published Press Forward?
It's New Mainstream Publishing. They're up in Jersey. So they're up in New Jersey. They were the one that actually published my book. And so it was a wild process. So once I submitted my stuff, I guess they had to go through a couple of board members to make sure that it fits of what they do. I guess different publishers have different guidelines of what represents who they are. And so it took a while, and then finally I ended up getting a call from the rep from that place and gave me good news. So, and then that's how we took it from there on. So, it's pretty exciting. So I'm happy. I'm looking now. I'm doing a second book now, so I'm just working on that one. That one's called Press Road to the Next Level, and so that's where we're at.
That's amazing. And then do you do a lot of book tours? Because I'm always seeing people with your book everywhere.
I'm sorry?
Do you do a lot of book tours?
I just do a little bit of it. Now it's starting to get full blown now, because I have an agent now that represents me. At the time, it was so hard for me because I'm so damn old school. I don't try to get online too much. I just take a picture, put it up, and keep it moving. And then they're like, "Brother, you ain't gonna get nowhere if you're just doing that." And so so that's what ended up happening. So I had a friend of mine, Dolly. She has a talk show. It's called Dolly's Talk Show, and she's from California, and then she just moved to Maryland. And so she was like, "Well, you got to get a hold of my friend. She does all this stuff, and she helps people like you." And I was like, "Then punch away, and hopefully that will work." And a blessing became, because I then came in encounter with Shelly Harrison, and she's the CEO of Luminary Speaker, and she's in California. She's in Los Angeles.
Oh wow!
And she's my rep. So she's the one that does everything for me now. She does all the touring for me, all the booking and everything. And I just now concentrate on writing my materials and anything that I need to talk about. And so it kind of helps out with me because of my background, kind of diverse in any angle. And because I'm an officer, that makes it even like a lot better, because of the things that I've been exposed to more now. And so that's my primary job. I'm a federal officer. And so in the daytime, I'm a speaker. Well, I'm a speaker 24/7. But I end up opening up the company Press Forward in 2017. It was a birth for Press Forward, but and that's how that started. But in 2000,
right? Isn't Press Forward the name of the book? Press Forward is the name of your book. Yeah. So then you built a company around the book?
Yeah. So what happened with that, how that name came about was through a Bible. I was going through a real difficult time at some point through my life. And then I remember getting the word in my head saying next level, next level. But then I was like, in a crazy way, I was arguing with the Lord. I was like, dude, you putting this in my head. And I was like kind of debating back and forth. I've never been a religious person at all. And so I was just like, if you could show me that word in the Bible, then so be it. I'm going to serve you from this point on. And I remember I felt like seeing forever. It was brought in my heart to read Philippians 3:12-16. But then when I read 14, it was saying pressing towards the things of the upward call to win the heavenly prize. And I was like, and I just kept reading, and that word pressing towards, and I was like, wait a minute. So I went back on it, and then of course I'm going through every I'm going through every book to find out, trying to play dumb. I'm like, nah, that can't be that. And so I got into an amplifier, and then they're saying pressing over, pressing towards, and then it says taking it to the next level. And then that was it. I said, all right, this is it.
Wow.
And that's how that started. Yeah, so it was incredible, because then I was like, all right, so be it. So and then that's how that started. And then I initiated with that way, because then I realized that what I thought what I was gearing to end up being something else. So it was more like I was doing all these different things. It was more of a training to set me up where I'm at right now, so that I'll be able to be equipped and be able to talk to people and actually do my work that I need to do. So it's my mission. For me, I know this is not a job. It's a mission for me. It's a calling that I need to do. And I love the thought that I'm able to go out there and help whoever it is that needs to hear,
That's incredible. And do you do a lot for the hearing impaired? Do they look up to you because of your hearing loss?
Well, I'm looking into that. I'm a big advocate for that. But also, I'm an ambassador for a company, an organization called Compel America, and they deal with bullying. And their organization is so off the hook because they kind of do what I was always a believer in, not just helping those that are getting picked on, but I like the thought of executing a problem, and that problem is usually the person that initiated. So that's where I come in. So I normally do is deal with who started it, and then initiating why, and go into the whole route of, because it starts from home or it's wherever it is. But in order for that bullying to stop, you have to really hit it where it's starting at. There's a lot of organizations that are helping those that are getting picked on, but that's it. So what I like about them is that they do both. They're not just trying to help those that are getting picked on, but they also helping those that are starting the problem. Because obviously they're going through they're going through some problem that they have to feel some type of need to go and start with someone that has nothing, nothing to do with you. There's this person is, whether it's a girl, boy, whoever, and they're just chilling, and all of a sudden you got some clown that had nothing better to do and start picking on them and doing, harsh things. You got things in social media picking on, and it becomes a problem because then now, especially with the COVID, you got kids that are stuck at home. Can you imagine those kids that are getting picked on and they got nowhere to go and they're sitting there, there's nothing to do. And then, and you got everyone on social media telling them, hey, I think it's a good idea. You just hang yourself, and then you got,
I know it's
like,
gotten
we don't know
really
what's
bad.
going on.
Well, I'm glad you're providing a voice for them. What's interesting is before you, I just interviewed a man who is actually trying to help with movies for the hearing impaired. He's really trying to make that happen and make sure that people that can watch independent films that have hearing disabilities. So I love that I have both of you guys on the same episode.
Oh, definitely. I'm game. I went on music and arts because of the fact that art was one of my therapy that got me through my diversity, my crisis that I was going through. Because for me, it was a place where nobody can go into. It's a world that I created, and I started doing that, and it was like therapeutic for me. So I was always drawing graffitis and everything. I did a lot of art gallery paintings, and so kind of like that was like my area where I just kind of like nobody can touch this, and then I became involved with a lot of the hearing impaired because of my class that I was involved, and that's what kind of started that as well. What At the turning point, I had a kid that was picking on this one girl that she was really, really like disabledly bad. Like she couldn't walk, her arm was messed, like she was like, but she was such a sweet girl. And I was never a fighter. I was never a fighter. I was that punk. I was that guy, like they say something, I could run. That's all I did, because that's all I did when I was a kid. Because I used to get chased by a whole bunch of kids to get beat up. And so I was good at running. And I got to one point where something just switched in my head. I was like, hell with this. And so I confronted these kids. I said, listen, you got to back it up. So, what is it to you? And so on. And Nikolai said, listen, just leave her alone. And then they're like, you like, and then kind of try to say, you like her. So it's not about the liking, man. That's just not right. You need to stop. And so then I guess when he said, you're not handicapped, what you care about these people? And there's something, just the way he said it, just snapped. And I was just doing an ass whipping right there because I just couldn't sit and just be like, whatever. And something just switched. And from that point on, I became a total prick. Because now, like anybody that will talk about anyone with disability, I was game. I'm only 5'3". So, like, I didn't like, I stood at that damn height, I think, since I was 12 years old. I didn't grow much. But I was like a firecracker ready to go explode because of the fact that I couldn't realize why the hell kids were so mean, like it's so brutal that
Right.
they they doing this crap, and they're like, everybody got their own interests, and you're gonna not just come and try to pile on that. And so at that became my turning point. That became more like, now I became an advocate. More, I became that voice, and I was like, if I had a snitch, oh, so be it. I was like telling the teacher, hey, so and so, and they'll look at me like, oh, wait until after school, then bring it. Hey, he's gonna wait for me after school. Like, it was like that, because I had to figure out a way to get out of it, not to get my butt whipped. But at the time, it was just I just got so tired of being tired. I got to the point where I don't want to run no more. Like, why the hell am I running? And so, yeah, and seeing these other kids get picked on, and then they can't really do nothing. And they got their parents that really didn't give a damn, could never showed up. So it was kind of rough. So I knew firsthand, because I lived that life. And so I was like, no, if nobody want to take initiative of doing something, then I guess I'm going to be that guy. And so that's what ended up happening.
I appreciate you coming on my show and sharing the story. We're going to follow you on Instagram. Everyone's going to follow you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. I appreciate you having me. I'm a big fan of your stuff. So I was like, oh, wow, yeah, she loved me, yeah. So even like I'm on vacation, I didn't care. So my family are good with that. They were definitely supportive. But I really appreciate you having me on. It's great.
Thank you.
Felt right in the moment, felt right in the summertime. It felt right drinking cherry wine with you. Just wanted to own it, just wanted to take the time, learn all the things that I could about you. Now it's such a mess here, oh, we are just stressed here. Used to be so easy with you. Now I must confess here, oh, I must confess, dear, don't think I'm in love with you. Winter is coming and I don't know what to do, and there's no more use in running, no more running to you. And I don't want your loving, I don't wanna be just friends, knowing all this time we were playing pretend.
It's a